Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed panelists, guests, I'm delighted to welcome you today to this panel on how to get the balance right between water scarcity and sustainability. Sustainability, the balance between conservation and diversification of sources of water supply, how to make those sources of supply more sustainable from a green perspective. We are live streaming this event today, so I'd also like to welcome those of you who are joining us on the live stream event. I am Sue Barrett. I'm the Director, Head of Infrastructure in EBRD's infrastructure team covering Turkey, the Middle East and Africa, and I will moderate the session today. I'd like to start with a few housekeeping points so that you know how we're going to run the session. The discussion will be predominantly in English with French translation, which you can listen to via your headsets. You can ask questions to our panelists through the Q&A function on Slido, which you should have on the tablets with you or on the app if you're listening in through the live stream. What you need to do is log in to www.slido.com, put in the code, which is hashtag, here it is up on the screen, 917000. Then you go to Auditorium des Ambassadeurs, where you can ask the question, and we'll be putting them to our panelists at the end of the session, assuming we have time. And please don't forget to say who you're representing and who you'd like to address your question to. We'll also be using Slido during the session to poll the audience, so please do log in again and give us your feedback so we can get the reaction from the panel. Last piece of housekeeping, we'll have an illustrator working with us today, Josh Knowles. He's going to be working in the background, and he's going to be capturing the key themes of the discussion in a visual artwork. So we'll be checking in with Josh at the end of the discussion to see how that looks, how the discussion looks from a visual point of view. So there is Josh, just saying hello to everyone, and we'll check in with him, as I say, at the end of the session to see how he's captured the discussion for us today. Now I would like to hand over to NANDITA PARSHAD, who is EBRD's Managing Director of the Sustainable Infrastructure Group, who is going to really set the scene for our discussion today. So NANDITA, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sue. Your Excellencies, esteemed colleagues, partners, and friends, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on this panel, a topic of critical importance for Morocco and other countries in the region on how to address water supply in ways that are both sustainable and resilient. Water scarcity is a significant and prevailing concern, with the Middle East and North Africa one of the most water-scarce regions in the world. Don't be fooled by the few welcome drops we had today. The shortage of water across the countries in the southern, eastern, and Mediterranean region, the SEMED region as we call it at EBRD, will become increasingly severe over the next century, prompted by an expansion in demand for water, combined with a reduction in precipitation induced by climate change. These impacts are already being felt today, including here in Morocco. National governments across the region are very well aware that their ability to supply water to a growing number of users is under threat. Many are increasingly looking to safeguard existing water supplies, but also develop new non-conventional sources through seawater desalination and recycling treated wastewater, and looking to the private sector for both know-how and investment. Whilst exciting, these types of solutions are also often very energy intensive, which can also be a challenge, particularly in already highly fossil fuel dependent countries. But here is the good news. Many of these countries also have vast renewable energy resources that can help address both the energy transition and the water challenges, and help strike a better balance between the needs of society for more water and the environment. So today, we will hear from both the public and the private sector what is needed to accelerate these sustainable solutions. What kinds of policy and regulatory reforms and approaches can unlock the huge investment required? So I'm very pleased to have with us today His Excellency, Minister Nizar Baraka, Minister of Equipment and Water here in Morocco. He will share Morocco's experience on both reducing water stress through conventional and non-conventional approaches. The country's plans are truly ambitious and include plans to develop the largest seawater desalination plant in Africa in Casablanca under a PPP scheme that I'm sure we will hear more about. From the private sector, we are very privileged to have with us PADMANATHAN, Vice Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of Aqua Power, a company that needs no introduction, having built some of the most impressive and landmark renewable power and desalinated water production plants across 11 countries. I look forward to hearing from you, Paddy, on how you can share that experience with us and how it can be relevant for the countries of the southern and eastern Mediterranean. And joining us on the video link, from Paris, we have THIERRY, Chairman, CEO, and founder of Meridiam, a leading global investor in infrastructure, active in emerging and frontier markets, and now one of the major owners of Suez, a global water player. Meridiam is a long-standing partner of the EBRD, and I look forward to hearing from THIERRY on what is needed from his experience to attract private investment to address water scarcity issues in a sustainable way. And last but not least, we have WALID MADWAR, General Manager and Vice President of Matito Utilities, where he leads business development and operations activities throughout the Middle East and Africa. Matito is an important and influential player in the region's water sector. In 2021, Matito was recognized as the most impactful water company by Capital Finance International. That award acknowledged Matito's growth and ability to create the talent needed to support sustainable solutions in this sector. And now I hand you back to Sue Barrett.
Thank you very much, Nandita, and a warm welcome from me also to our panelists here in the room and Thierry on the video link there. I'd like to make this discussion as interactive as we can. So even though we're a little bit constrained on time, if you want to sort of come in and comment on what your colleagues, your fellow panelists have said, please just interrupt me. What I'd like to do, though, to get us started is to start with a quick-fire question, so a couple of minutes response from each of you. We just heard there from Nandita about the importance of water for key sectors of the economy and also for public health. But we also heard about the looming threat to water supplies created by the increasing demand and also the impacts of climate change. So if I could start with you, Minister Baraka, could you tell us how worried are you about water scarcity?
Well, I would like, first of all, to thank you for this opportunity to talk about what's happening in Morocco and what we are preparing to face this big issue. And I would like to say that, as you know, Morocco is one of the countries who is very affected by climate change. And we are having more years of drought, and at the same time, we have more extreme phenomena. And that's why we consider that it's very important to face this situation. And we have to say that Morocco began very early. And thanks to the vision of His Majesty the King Hassan II, and continued by His Majesty the King Mohammed VI, we began from the 60s to build the dams. We have now 184 dams with the possibility of stockage of more than 20 billion cubic meters. And we are still investing on dams. So we have 20 dams more with the new program. But we consider also dams is good, but it's not enough. That's why we work on desalination, as you said before, and we have a big program for desalination. We're working also on demand, how to have better efficiency on water use, using water. At the same time, we are trying also to work on protecting the water and the quality of water.
Excellent. Very, very strong commitment there over a very long period of time from the Moroccan government. Paddy, over to you. What do you think? What are your views on how worried should we be about water scarcity in this region?
Look, I think water scarcity is real, and as climate change, it's going to accelerate it. So, and population growth, industrialization is all consuming more water. But the good news is that technology continues to deliver spectacular solutions, just like in the case of renewable energy, how we've been able to reduce the costs and come up with new solutions that starts to really give the opportunity of net zero reality at competitive costs. Same story in the case of trying to address the water issue. So, yeah, the most obvious source, surface water sources, the rain, catch the rain, take from the river. Unfortunately, the sources are running out, and it's becoming less dependent. So we are left to deal with it. Honestly, there are only two other sources, right? Three sources, actually. Let me not forget the most obvious source. The obvious source is become more efficient at using water. So water efficiency, and even there, it's not just about changing habits. It's not there about you stopping the tap while you're, putting shampoo on your hair in the bath in the morning. It's about also technology now allowing us to be able to do that. Okay, so there's enormous amount of opportunity that I think we can start to address at scale that can sort of continue to reduce water consumption on a per capita basis or per industrial unit output basis, whatever. So that's the obvious one. And the next sort of most obvious one is, of course, reuse the wastewater. Okay, the wastewater, the washing water, so at this point, everybody then stops and says, wait a minute, I'm not going to drink that stuff. 70+% of, on an average basis, water that we consume, humanity, doesn't touch our lips. It's for a lot of other purposes, irrigation, washing, cleaning. So that's the next most obvious thing to do. And enormous technology solutions. You can drink water, by the way, and completely reuse that water. There are cities that have no choice. Windhoek in Namibia has absolutely no choice. So 50% is recycled back straight into the city supply. And people are all living very healthily and happily, no problem. But that's fine. We don't even need to get there. Technology solutions are, and the cost of the technology is also coming down. And some of that technology is actually the same for the next most massive, obvious solution. And that is, of course, we have, and particularly those, everything in the coastal regions, can access seawater, which is, of course, full of salt, and the desalination process. Now, phenomenal advancements in desalination. Not sort of, spending too much time explaining the technology, boil the kettle, catch the vapor, condense it, pure water, brute force and ignorance technology, as I call it. And the other one is a bit more sophisticated, where you pressurize in a membrane process, osmotic pressure, you liberate the ions, clean water. Both are energy intensive. Using fossil fuel, well, today the good news, so forget the past, today the good news is that we have brought down the use of energy by factors of not 2 or 3, by factors of 10, 20. So we use 20 times less energy to produce pure water per cubic meter than we used to do just 10 years ago. Okay, so that's the phenomenal advancement. Of course, what then has happened, the cost has come down. So if you look at using the reverse osmosis process, the cost of producing water has come down by a factor of 10 over factor of 8 just in the last 7 years. So we are able today to produce clean water using the desalination process at about 40 cents per cubic meter in some of the environments.
Paddy, can I stop you? I mean, this is fascinating, all the detail you're going into. I think what I take from what you're saying there is that, yes, it's a serious problem, but in fact, so much can be done, so many different things can be done, and so much progress has been made over the last 5, 10 years in order to address this issue. Yeah. I'm just wondering if I could get Thierry to come in on what you're saying and give us his view, Thierry, if you wouldn't mind, on how you see this water scarcity issue, how worried should we be about it? Just a quick reaction on maybe some of the things that Paddy was talking about there.
I think thank you, and thank you for inviting me, and Your Excellency, and then good afternoon, everyone. Apologies for not being with you in person today. But this issue of water scarcity, I think it was predictable 5 years ago, and it is still predictable in terms of how worse it's going to be. I mean, understanding that every 1 degree of rise in temperature means that the water cycles are 5 or 10% faster. So this water scarcity is actually showing to prove very, very important. And when you think about the fact that 60% of the population is around coast, so the need for desalination as a solution comes as an obvious one. The reassuring part about water scarcity is we have all the solutions. It's the production, it's the sustainable production of it, it's the adaptation, and I think this is what's being said in terms of being frugal in the use of water, reuse water, adapt our system to be more efficient, but also be able to produce more. I mean, if I take the The numbers, I mean, today we probably produce about 100 million of cubic meter of water through desalination every day. At Suez, they expect this to be 35 million more every day in the next 5 years. So what are the issues? The issues in terms of sustainability, and this 35 million a day is probably around 20 billion euros investment. So the issue is a question of affordability, because that's where this water scarcity can see real obstacle, and this is where we have to be concerned about, because the amount of capital that is required. And the other side of the sustainability to address the water scarcity is what was just said. It is the cost of energy and the cost of low carbon energy, because in a way you don't want to worsen the problems by desalination being supported by fossil fuel energy. So you have two major challenges, because the cost of desalination is sort of, let's put it roughly half the capex cost and the energy cost in the back of it. Two major challenges to address. So it is possible, and I think that's why we can be optimistic, but at the same time it requires very good government policy and focus, just like the Minister just addressed it for Morocco. And a lot of focus from investors as well, as much as operators in that sector.
Yeah. So thank you, Thierry. I mean, you were picking up on what Paddy was saying there about the technology being there, the solutions being there, but also a very important point there about affordability. And in the interim, until we get to the point which you were talking about, Paddy, where the costs come down even further, the need to mobilize maybe blended financing solutions in order to make desalinated water and some of these expensive water processes affordable for the countries and for the governments that are trying to address this issue. Walid, can I come to you, please, and ask you the same question? Is there anything else that you would like to add on to how worried you are about the water scarcity issue, or whether it's an opportunity for companies like Matito and Aquapower and Meridiam Suez to come in and really help speed up the bringing the cost down and creating more supply and diversification as well as conservation of water sources? What's your view?
Well, to start, it's very scary, the water scarcity, if I look back in the last 10 years, now and the next 10 years. So the rapid growth of population, urbanization, you know, it's a bit scary. And it could be an opportunity for a company like Matito and, of course, Aquapower and many other players in the market. Once we address these issues, you have physical and economical water scarcity, and basically the physical one, it is the climate change, and it's different, huge topic to be discussed. But the economical one is where we as a developer believe we can have a room to improve the water scarcity. Rightly said from Paddy, the water reuse system, where we are involved in Egypt in 2 big plants. One is running, one is under construction, of almost total capacity of 10 million cubic meter. Namibia is a very, very good example to just to show the world that this project is doable since, over 10 years ago. And now we're involved in Botswana, same story, where you treat wastewater all the way to drinking. There is no problem at all. In Saudi Arabia, they passed a decree, a fatwa, religious decree, like I would say 10 years ago or over, that they can be used for irrigation. This is step one. And definitely it can be used for drinking, and I don't see any issue at all. The cost of energies went down, the efficiency of the developers, the technology, membrane, of desal projects, it lasts longer these days. People are more familiar with it. Lenders are more, they have better appetite to give a good financial terms, so you can have really optimized tariff. 7 years, 10 years ago, the tariff was about $1.2, $1.3. Now it's 0.4. And this is on the higher end. Maybe other area could be cheaper than that. So we see a good room for developers, such as all the private developers, to have room for to improve the water scarcity. It doesn't just involve only the production of the water. It is the water management all the way down, the non-revenue water, the billing and collection, because, for example, in some countries, not mentioning name in Europe, where they had prepaid meters. It's like similar thing like when you have a prepaid phone card. You tend not to use it. You tend not to keep it. So the water companies in one of the countries, Southern Africa, was really complaining people don't consume water anymore, as it used to. Okay? So it was in a sarcastic way.
Yes.
Right? But they were happy, but at the same time, the revenue was not, because there was prepaid meter, and this is really people think about it. Regretfully to say that the water tariff is very low in Africa. It does not reflect at all the reality, the cost. And it has to be at cost. You cannot improve anything, the non-revenue water, the network, because network takes about maybe 5 times the cost of the production of water. So network is not easy. Availability of master plan and detail of the network, existing network does not exist correctly. So I see that on the downstream of non-revenue water, how we can save water, capacity building is very important for people to understand and how they can manage the billing and collection and the network management. All of that, there is a room for the private sector to come in and just have some saving.
Again, another interesting, you wanted to add something there,
Yeah, no, the other point I wanted to add is that let's also not forget, so costs are starting to come down on both ends. So this is an energy-intensive process, but we've been able to reduce the intensity of energy. But at the same time, we're also driving down the cost of energy itself. You pointed out that in many of these countries that are suffering water stress, they have got the fantastic sun and the wind. And we now know that we can generate electricity using renewable energy at a fraction of the cost of using fossil fuels now when the resources are available. And the technology allows us to operate in that intermittent way. So we can couple the production together with when the very low-cost renewable energy is available. So that also, so in Abu Dhabi, we have got the first very large scale, 900,000 cubic meter plant that is starting to use 40% of the energy that is used in that plant is coming from solar. And with that, we were able to reduce the cost by 2.5%. Okay, now 2.5% doesn't sound a lot, it's a lot. For 25 years, you're going to be using that savings of 2.5% just by introducing renewable energy. And this is the first time renewable energy at that scale is being used in a desalination process. And can you imagine then how quickly we will start to drive down cost even further?
Mr. Rakat, this is the perfect point to bring you in and to ask you about what more you're doing here in Morocco in order to address the water scarcity issue. Because, of course, just recently we saw ONE issuing a tender for a huge desalination plant in Casablanca, and that, I believe, is going to involve the renewable energy which Paddy was talking about. So tell us more about what you're doing.
Thank you very much. Yes, of course. We have this new, very important station of desalination in Casablanca of 300 cubic meters. And we put, and for us it's one of the key points to have a better price, is to use the renewable energy. And we are looking to develop a market of renewable energy thanks to the attraction of Morocco. There is solar energy, there is wind energy. And at the same time, we have a lot of investment here in Morocco to do hydrogen. Then it will be also helpful for the future for desalination. And as you said before, we will do it on PPP. That means that we will develop a better way to have the private sector involved on this station. At the same time, also to have the better technology to do it. But I would like also to add that we begin to do it with the renewable energy in Dakhla. We did the plant, we begin, and this plant is very important because it's done with wind energy. And for the first time, we have a plant of desalination, and we did a station of wind energy for the plant. And thanks to that, the price it's only 20 cents of euro, 22 cents of euro of kilowatt. That means that's very, very low price, and we will use it for agriculture sector, for irrigation, and also for drinking water. And that's why we consider that we will develop a lot desalination in our country. We have now 10 cities with desalination of water, and we will double. We will have 20 cities. We talked about Casablanca. We will in the north, in Nador, in Asfi, in El Jadida, in Sidi Ifni, in Layoun, and other places. I would like also to add that, of course, it's important to talk about what we can do for the supply. I talked about the investment on dams, on big dams, but also on very little dams. We will invest 129. We will have 127 little dams in our country on these 2 years, but we are working also on reusing water, and we have only a capacity of 70 billion of cubic meter. The goal is to have 350 by 2026. And we are developing also with the companies here in Morocco to do it. But we would like also to use the reusing water not only for the gardens and for the cities, but also for the Gulf, but also on agriculture sector. And it's one of our big goals because, as you know, 85% of the water go to agriculture. That means that we need to have better efficiency on agriculture sector. That's why we are doing a very important thing. It's about irrigation. We convert the irrigation. We convert 700,000 of hectare on irrigation to have a better irrigation. At the same time, the goal is to have 1 million hectares by 2026 at the end of this government. But it's one of the key work we are doing. And we are also working on one very big issue, I think. We are talking about demand, how to have better efficiency on tourism, on industry. All the new area of industry, the industrial area, they will have renewable energy. They will use desalination, and at the same time, we will reduce the carbon. And the goal is to be involved on this Green New Deal, European New Deal. And Morocco, of course, as you know, is one of the big partners of the European Union, and would like to be involved on the same goal. And I would like also to add one key point is governance.
Yes.
We can do all what we want, but if there is not integrated management of water, we will not reach our goals.
Correct.
And for this, I think we are very important to make all the users involved on the management of water, and that's why we are doing some agreements in all the areas with the agriculture sector, with the farmers, with the industrials, with the tourism, and also with the citizens and the representatives of the citizens, because we consider that it's our future to develop and to have a better governance of water.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a really important point, that integrated approach. So not just about the water supply, the water conservation, but really involving everyone in that process. Thank you very much for that, Mr. Baraka. What I'd like to do now, Her Excellency Dr. Rania Al-Mashat, the Minister of International Cooperation of Egypt, had hoped to join us today, but unfortunately due to unforeseen travel commitments, she was not able to join us live. But what I was able to do was ask her before today's panel about her views on water scarcity in the region and what the Egyptian government is doing to address these issues and encourage the adoption of more sustainable water practices in the water sector. We have a message from her, so here is what she had to say.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be with you on this panel. A very important topic, of course, water scarcity. As we're talking about climate change and everything that's happening in the world, and particularly on the continent, it is one of the most pressing issues. For us in Egypt, enabling access to drinking water and sanitation access is already near universal levels. In 2020 and 2021, the government directed close to 26% of total public investments in urban development sector to water and wastewater projects. Also in 2020, the Ministry of Housing announced the completion of 295 projects for drinking water. The cost approximately $2.4 billion. So there is that commitment from the Egyptian government to ensure that access to water is available to people. Also in villages, we have delivered the sanitation services to 703 villages, cost around more than $300 million as well. And we have a 10-year plan to try and finance and extend replacing outdated water pipelines. The proportion of the population benefiting from proper management, sanitation services, including hand washing facilities with soap, also increased from 50% to 66%. Another very important aspect of this approach is investments that took place in water waste management projects. We have more than 52 wastewater treatment plants. Many of them have also been built in collaboration with our development partners. For example, El Gabal Al Asfar with African Development Bank. We also have Bahr Al Baqar with some of the Arab funds. And the size and scale of these treatment plants is quite significant. Also, with respect to protecting water resources, the lining of canals across different governorates and villages in the country is taking place. So again, a very keen focus on making sure that access to water is available. When we take a look at climate adaptation and resilience, because this is again one of the key topics for COP. During COP26 it was mentioned, and during COP27, which Egypt will preside over, it is very alive, and this is something that the government, as president of COP, is going to be also pushing. Therefore, adaptation projects are very key, and that's where the water, irrigation, agriculture come in. We have some examples that we can showcase, but we also want globally that as we move forward on climate finance, that adaptation projects also become high on the agenda. Everybody's talking about blended finance, and we want to make sure that the perception that adaptation projects may not generate revenues for private sector is not entrenched, because there are examples also that are creating revenue streams. Some of the challenges that face us all when it comes to water resources is what we are seeing in terms of climate change. The desertification is quite key. Climate challenges, which are mentioned in the IPCC report, all of them highlight water scarcity and loss as one of the key items. Egypt is helping in the construction of dams in African countries, so that is also one of the objectives and the focus in the current time. Another way is through modern irrigation systems, so that every drop of water is properly utilized. Another very important aspect, and this is what different countries are doing, and we are among them, announcing our climate strategy. And in looking at our climate strategy 2050, climate is not looked at as an individual or isolated objective. It's a development objective. and within the different sectors in the strategy, agriculture and water come at the fore, identifying the financing gap, identifying the projects that are required to be able to move forward, and as I mentioned, incentivize private sector engagement, particularly in water desalination plants, is something that we have on the agenda. Thank you very much.
So some very interesting comments there also from Dr. Rania, and very much picking up on the comments that were made by the panel here and also THIERRY. And there at the end, the call to the private sector, which of course is going to be very important in solving this issue. Now, in the spirit of engaging everyone in the conversation, what I'd like to do is ask a poll question to the audience to get you to give us your feedback. It's a very simple question, and the question is enough being done, in your view, to tackle water scarcity, and who is it that needs to do more? And your questions should be coming up shortly, but they are, is it A, the private sector, or B, the public sector? Now, for you to vote, what you need to do, as I mentioned at the start, is to log on to www.slido.com, put in the meeting code, which is hashtag 917000, and then you go to Auditorium des Ambassadeurs and get voting, please. Might take a few minutes for everyone to log in and place your votes. And hopefully we should see the results starting to come up on the screen as you start to vote. Let's see.
In the meantime, we can start.
I can see everyone. Here we go. Here we go. Now, is this? Oh, so we started very highly on the public sector, but now the private sector has come up to 25%. No, 33%. Back to 29%. You can see this moving around a bit, but I think, when's it going to stop? Has everyone finished? We were wondering when we were looking at this if we were going to get to 50-50, and we're almost there. Just wondering if everyone has finished voting.
This is fun.
Well, gosh, it's still moving a bit. I mean, it looks to me, by looking at those results, as if there's not much in it. So I would say the conclusion from the audience is pretty much, it's a combination. Both of you need to probably.
Yeah,
you want to
it
say
is
something?
pretty much. Look, so it has to be public sector led. Public sector has to do. I mean, what is it? Making sure that the right tariffs are set. Water is something, you can't monopolize it. It is for the good, and it's such a fundamental need, right?
Yeah.
So public sector has to lead it, and public sector has to get the population to respond by paying the price for it. Not, you achieve nothing by subsidizing, and you've got to get out of that mindset. So that's got to be public sector. So it's policy. And public sector is the one that has to set the policy on reuse. That is, public sector is the one that has to drive the use of renewable energy. So policy. Private sector will respond. But of course the private sector is needed, and therefore private sector will. So, I mean, the answer, I think, public
came out
sector
the right
led,
way, yeah.
private
With a
sector,
strong involvement of the private sector. THIERRY, can I come to you? What do you think? Was that the result that you were expecting?
Yeah,
do you think it's right? And what do you think the public sector needs to do?
I mean, I think it's a partnership, and nothing will happen without those two being involved. I mean, obviously, and the bank is very familiar with policy engagement on something so complex as addressing water scarcity that requires such a holistic view. I mean, from reuse to desalination to efficiency to adaptations. That includes, not having more artificial soils in your cities and things like that. It has to be coming from a public sector policy, but that does need a lot of input from people like EBRD, development partners, and private sector. Because in the end, the solution to reach sustainability has to focus on low carbon solutions, but also affordable solutions. And this is where blended finance comes in, and this is where private capital can be leveraged to really support public sector. And as was well said, water is an essential service. So it is a public choice to decide whether they want it subsidized, being paid by tax money, or being paid directly by the user, but this is a fairly strong political choice. But what we can do is really help making the most optimal choice for the long term of the country.
Walid, maybe you want to respond, and then I'll ask Mr. BARRETT to come in and defend the public sector.
I think it is public sector. You have to start with the political will. And once you start with political will, proper PPP legislation, policy are in place. Then we can talk about partnership between both parties. And it takes maybe more than two to tango. There is lenders, there is developers, there is the off-taker. And I don't call it client here. We are all together. And any issues can be tackled and discussed and resolved. All the bankability issues, anything can be discussed when proper structure is there. And I see the political will must be there, followed by really when the client or the off-taker hire proper advisors, because it is a relationship of 25 years. There is a lot of depth, there is a lot of requirements, and contract must be balanced. Once the contract is balanced, the relationship is balanced. It's not one way, it's not this way or that way. So a proper advice, political will, proper advisors, if they're in place, I can see the project is moving ahead. Many projects made a U-turn that I've seen, many. Once they realize the magnitude of the work or the responsibility of the off-taker, maybe they back off, they don't proceed. But once these elements are there, I think partnership will be there and it will be successful. Okay.
Thank you, Walid. Minister BARRETT, your turn now to give us your view from the public sector. Who do you think needs to do more?
I think that I agree with what my friend says. First of all, we need political will.
Yeah.
Second, vision. Third, policy. Fourth, planning and programs. And then, of course, to have this partnership with the private sector. And I think that, and when I'm talking about the partnership with the private sector, to do to apply the strategy, but also to be ecologically responsible. But it's very important to have involved in their policies and in their work to have water efficiency, and also to use using water. And I would like to add one key point. At the end, as we said before, it's very important to have this mix between renewable energy and water. And for us, we consider that one way of to storage energy, renewable energy, is water, thanks to desalination. That means that we have now a real opportunity to have very integrated policies between energy and water, and also to include into the sectoral strategies water efficiency in tourism, in industry, and all the other kind of strategy.
No, excellent. So a great question, I think, to the audience. Sorry, go ahead.
The other thing I was also going to say, in addition to sort of ensuring environmental stewardship, in the process of developing the sector and delivering that the much needed water, we also have the opportunity, and we need to sort of focus on social responsibility and the governance aspect of it, as you already pointed out. So it needs to be. So in this particular case, I know ESG, environment, social, and governance is the buzzword of the sort of set of words of the day. But in this particular case, it becomes that much more important because it is such a basic need. Life depends on it, and we rely so much on it. It makes sense for that to come together, and when that comes together, it becomes more efficient as well.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
increases efficiency.
Absolutely. We maybe have, just very quickly, we have some questions that have come in from the audience, but I think we're not going to have time to get to too many of them because we're almost out of time. Maybe, I mean, one of the most popular questions, which maybe I could get sort of quick fire answers, maybe just 1 minute. What can the public and private sector do more to deliver more affordable water? Is that something, Minister, maybe we could start with you. What could the public sector do to achieve more affordable water, to deliver more affordable water?
Well, I think that to deliver more, I think it's very important on this time to have real long-term policy.
Yeah, I think that's a good
Policy certainty.
Policy,
Yeah, exactly.
Policy for you, Paddy.
Certainty, yeah.
Certainty.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Thierry, what's your view? So what? Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Compatible with the long-term policy is also long-term investment, because the way that those investments are amortized really require long-term partnership from investors with a sustainability long-term view as well, to really carry this through. Because if you think short-term in the water sector, I think it could be quite detrimental to the affordability.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point, a long-term strategy.
Capital investments with a very long technical life.
Yeah.
So if you don't have that long-term certainty, private sector will deliver, but we will try to amortize it over 10 years instead of 35 years that we can.
Yeah. Really good point. Walid, any last final comment from you?
I think the affordability in itself is a bit elastic, because it could be affordable here, not affordable there. Mm-hmm. So price must be at cost. Mm-hmm. Many places it's not a cost. And due to low cost of tariff, due to loss in the system, at the end it's not affordable. So you have to tackle this part, and then you really realize that the water is affordable. I'll just give you one example. I was in one of the countries in West Africa, and there is not much water, and there is pumping water, manual pumping. And they sell the water by bucket. So I converted the bucket into cubic meter. Very remote area, very small village. And I realized that the water tariff was $1.5. That was 2014, I'm talking. And they're paying for it. But they buy water per bucket. So hygienic, and many other issues is involved there. But at the end, the cost was high. And it was affordable. Right? Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, it's just, once you manage the downstream of the water side, including billing collection, non-revenue water, and then water will be affordable that time.
Excellent.
And that will make the project very sustained. Okay? Because all the lenders as well, they're going to ask these questions, and they need an answer. Okay? So anyway.
Perfect. Thanks, Walid. Well, I think we're almost at the end of the session, so I would like now, if I may, to check in with Josh, our illustrator, to see how he's captured the discussion for us in his visual artwork, to see how he's getting on. So if we could have Josh, there we are. There is the artwork for us on the screen there. So looking for sustainable and resilient solutions. Demand is high, yet resources low. Impacts are being felt today. How do we innovate for sustainability? So lots of good messages there that he's managed to capture brilliantly for us on that visual. So thank you very much, Josh. We will make this available eventually so that you can, if you're interested in keeping this as a souvenir of the discussion today. I mean, what I take from the overall discussion very quickly is first of all, that there's a lot that needs to be done, but it requires integration, it requires engagement, it requires all stakeholders to be engaged in this issue of water scarcity. And there's really no time to lose in continuing to move forward with the innovations that Paddy was talking about, all the commitment investments that Minister Baraka and Dr. Rania were talking about. But there's also a need to use water more efficiently in reducing leakages and so on, which Walid was talking about. Thierry spoke a lot about the involvement of the private sector, policy, having a long-term vision. I think these are all really important aspects. And another role, I think, or something that the private sector really needs to do is to bring that innovation, to bring the cost down, and to really help also with the water management side and work together with the government and also with the users of water to make sure that they're managing it well, using it more efficiently. I'd like, as we're practically almost out of time, just to say a very big thank you to all of our panelists. I think it's been an absolutely excellent discussion today, very insightful. So to you, Your Excellency, Minister Baraka, Minister for Water and Equipment here in the Kingdom of Morocco, PADMANATHAN, the CEO of Aquapower, THIERRY, who is the founder and CEO of Meridiam, thank you very much for joining us virtually. WALID, MADWAR, VP of Matito Utilities, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you all to our audience also for joining us, and I wish you a very good afternoon.
Thank you.